The impossible battle begins. The Galactic Empire's fleet stretched across space like a massive, unbreakable wall. Hundreds of warships stood ready, their weapons armed, their defenses strong. This was the might of the Empire. Unstoppable, invincible, absolute. At the heart of the formation, Admiral Xalvik sat in his command chair, staring at the glowing display in front of him. The scanners had detected an enemy approaching, but something was strange. Only one ship. A murmur ran through the bridge crew. One ship, against the full force of the Galactic Empire. It had to be a mistake, perhaps a lost merchant vessel or a simple navigation error. Confirm enemy ship identity, Xalvik ordered. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of irritation. The Empire did not waste time on insignificant threats. Confirmed, Admiral. A junior officer replied, looking confused. It's a Terran warship. Silence filled the command deck. A human ship. Here, alone. The Empire had fought against humanity before. They were stubborn, aggressive, and dangerous in small numbers. But no human ship, no matter how advanced, could stand against an entire Imperial fleet. Xalvik allowed himself a smirk. "This will be quick," he muttered. The lone warship appears. Out in space, the Terran vessel came into view. It was small compared to the Empire's massive dreadnoughts, but there was something strange about it. It had no visible markings, no broadcast signal, no energy signature that matched any known human warship. The Empire's scanners struggled to lock onto it. The readings kept changing, as if the ship itself was refusing to be detected. "Admiral, the ship isn't responding to hails," the communications officer reported. "It's just sitting there." Xalvik frowned. "They're trying to intimidate us," he said, shaking his head. "Fire a warning shot. Show them what they're dealing with." A moment later, one of the Empire's battleships fired. A powerful energy blast surged through the darkness, heading straight for the tiny Terran vessel. Then the impossible happened. The human ship vanished. Not exploded, not dodged, not destroyed. It simply disappeared. Gasps filled the command deck. Officers frantically checked their instruments. No ship should be able to move that fast, not at this distance. Xalvik's jaw tightened. Where did it go? "Behind us," a panicked voice answered. Xalvik's eyes widened. He turned toward the display. The Terran ship had reappeared behind their fleet, without a single trace of movement, as if space itself had swallowed it and spat it back out. Then it fired. The first strike. A single thin beam of light shot from the Terran ship. It seemed harmless at first. Then it passed through 3 of the Empire's warships. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, boom. The 3 warships exploded at the same time, their reinforced hulls turning into burning debris. The shockwaves shook the surrounding ships, sending waves of fire and metal into space. The command deck erupted in chaos. "How? What kind of weapon was that?" an officer shouted. Xalvik stared in stunned silence. 3 of his finest warships, gone in an instant. No weapon he had ever seen could do that. And the human ship, it still hadn't moved. The Terran vessel sat there, silent and motionless, as if it was waiting for them to react. Fear creeps in. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Xalvik felt fear. This wasn't how battles were fought. The Empire always overwhelmed its enemies with numbers and firepower. But this enemy, they didn't follow the rules. Xalvik clenched his fists. No, he would not allow fear to take control. This was just a new human weapon. Advanced, yes, but not unstoppable. He turned to his officers. "All ships, fire at will. Destroy that thing." 100 warships fired at once. Missiles, plasma cannons, laser batteries. A storm of energy surged toward the lone human vessel, filling the black void with destruction. But the ship was gone again. This time, it moved. Not like normal ships, not even like the Empire's fastest fighters. It blinked, flickered. One moment it was there, the next it was behind them, then to the left, then above. Every shot missed. Every weapon failed. Zalvik felt a cold sweat on his forehead. This wasn't just a human warship. This was something else. Then, through the speakers, a voice came through. Calm, confident, unshaken. A human voice. You should have surrendered. Then the Terran ship fired again. And the nightmare began. The lone warship strikes. The bridge of the Imperial flagship was in chaos. Warning lights flashed, alarms screamed, and officers shouted over each other in confusion. Admiral Zalvik sat frozen, his hands gripping the armrests of his command chair. 3 capital ships, obliterated in seconds. And now, their sensors couldn't even track the enemy. How was this possible? A single human ship had just outmaneuvered an entire Imperial fleet. It wasn't just fast. It wasn't just powerful. It was untouchable. The second attack. Then, the Terran warship moved again. One moment, it floated silently in the void. The next, it flickered, reappearing inside the fleet's formation. A ripple of panic spread through the Imperial officers. This thing wasn't flying. It was teleporting. Recalculate firing solutions, barked a lieutenant. There's nothing to lock onto, sir. Another officer yelled back. It's like it's bending space itself. Zalvik's eyes darted to the enemy vessel. His throat went dry. The human ship was charging another shot. Evasive maneuvers, all SHIPS. The second blast hit. A single white beam cut across the battlefield like a god's judgment. 5 more warships vanished in explosions. The fleet's formation shattered. Ships broke ranks, captains screaming for evasive action. The disciplined Imperial fleet was gone, replaced by panic. A weapon beyond understanding. This isn't war, one officer whispered, voice trembling. Zalvik clenched his fists. This wasn't how battles worked. The Empire was supposed to be the superior force. They had technology beyond any civilization, fleets that crushed entire star systems. And yet, this one Terran ship was turning them into scrap metal. The enemy's weapons defied logic. Imperial shields, built to withstand planetary bombardments, offered no defense. How? What kind of weapon did this ship possess? Then the answer hit Zalvik like a thunderbolt. This wasn't a human warship. This was something more. Something new. Something the Empire had never faced before. The Empire strikes back. Admiral Zalvik forced himself to breathe. He was still in command. He still had hundreds of warships at his disposal. Form up. Switch to adaptive targeting. Spread out firing patterns. We will box this thing in. The surviving ships reorganized, their weapons shifting tactics. They fired everything. Missiles, kinetic slugs, disruptor beams, plasma bolts. A wall of death filled the void. The human ship vanished again. Reappeared behind them. Fired. Another ship exploded. This wasn't a battle. This was a massacre. The mysterious human message. Then, through the Imperial fleet's open channels, a voice cut through the chaos. It was calm, cold, unshaken. A human voice. Your fleet was doomed before this battle began. Silence. Even the alarms seemed quieter now. Zalvik stared at the screen, his mind racing. Who was piloting that ship? No human should be this powerful. No single vessel should be able to bring an entire Imperial armada to its knees. And yet, the impossible was happening before his eyes. The voice spoke again, and this time it carried a warning. You had your chance to retreat. Then, the Terran ship charged its weapon again, and the nightmare continued. The fleet's confidence shatters. Admiral Zalvik's hands trembled as he watched another one of his warships detonate into nothingness. The explosion sent burning debris spiraling through space, the wreckage drifting past the shattered remains of the once mighty Imperial armada. This wasn't just a defeat. This was annihilation. Hundreds of warships had surrounded a single enemy vessel, a Terran warship, an insignificant speck compared to the Empire's vast power. And yet it had destroyed them like they were nothing. For the first time in his long military career, Salvik felt something foreign in his chest. Not anger, not strategy. Fear. The human ship, a ghost in the void. The Imperial fleet tried everything. They changed formations. They adjusted their shields. They fired in every possible direction, hoping to corner the enemy ship. But nothing worked. The human ship moved like a phantom. It flickered in and out of existence, its movements so unnatural it seemed to break the laws of physics. One moment it was 1,000 kilometers away. The next, it was right beside them. Every time it reappeared, another Imperial warship was instantly erased. No wreckage, no escape pods, just gone. Salvik's crew was unraveling. "Sir," an officer shouted, voice filled with desperation, "we're losing ships faster than we can track. This isn't combat, it's a slaughter." Another ship exploded on the display. A battleship, gone in a blink. The officers on the bridge stopped giving orders. What was the point? The Empire's best minds couldn't even touch the enemy. Salvik turned to his second-in-command, Captain Vorex. The reptilian officer's scales had gone pale, his sharp claws digging into the command console. What kind of technology is this?" Vorex whispered. "A message from the darkness." Then, through the Imperial fleet's secured communications channel, the human's voice returned. "How many more must die before you understand?" The words weren't shouted. They weren't filled with rage or arrogance. The voice was calm, steady, inevitable. Salvik's breath caught in his throat. The human wasn't even taunting them. No, this was a warning. The fleet breaks, and then it happened. The Empire's unbreakable fleet broke. The commanders of the remaining warships, seasoned veterans, officers who had never known fear, suddenly began issuing the one command they were never trained to give. Retreat. It started with a single battleship, then 2 more, then a dozen. The mighty Imperial Armada, the symbol of the Empire's absolute rule, was turning tail and running. Salvik stared at the chaos unfolding on his screen. How had it come to this? The great Galactic Empire, rulers of the stars for centuries, had just met something beyond their understanding. A single human ship, and it had reduced their entire way of life to ash. The Admiral's last stand. But Admiral Salvik refused. His pride, his duty. He would not flee like the others. He would not let the Empire's legacy be shattered so easily. His claws tightened into a fist. His voice hardened. "All remaining warships with me," he growled. "We make our last stand." The command deck was silent. They all knew this was suicide. And yet, no one argued. No one dared. Because Salvik was still their admiral, and he would fight until the bitter end. Across the battlefield, only a handful of Imperial warships remained. The rest of the once great armada had either been obliterated or folded in disgrace. Salvik's command ship was the last to charge. He would face the human warship alone. And as the Terran vessel turned to meet him, he prepared to give the final order of his life. "Fire everything." The battle was not over yet. Desperate counterattack. The command deck of Admiral Salvik's flagship was silent. The alarms had stopped blaring. The panicked voices had gone quiet. The surviving officers stood at their stations, staring at the looming screen ahead, watching a single human warship drift through the burning wreckage of what had once been the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. The reality was undeniable. The Galactic Empire's mightiest armada was no more. And yet, Salvik still remained. His warship, the last sovereign, an Imperial dreadnought nearly the size of a small moon, was the final line of defense. His fleet was gone. His allies had followed, but he would not. Zalvik refused to run. "We are the Empire." His voice was calm, steady, commanding. "We do not surrender. We do not kneel." His crew stood motionless, waiting for his orders. The enemy ship hovered silently, as if studying them. Zalvik exhaled slowly. This was not a normal warship. That much was clear. The way it moved, flickering through space like a ghost, its weapons carving through Imperial defenses like they were paper. None of this should have been possible. And yet, here it was. The Terran ship had broken the rules of war. But Zalvik still had one last move left to play. A final trap. "Activate the exo-shield," Zalvik commanded. His officers hesitated for only a second before inputting the command. A deep hum vibrated through the dreadnought as an invisible barrier expanded outward, a sphere of pure energy engulfing the last sovereign. This was no ordinary shield. It was the most advanced defense system ever created. Technology stolen from conquered civilizations, refined over centuries. Nothing, not even a supernova, could break through it. Zalvik's eyes narrowed. Lock onto the human warship. His gunnery officers moved quickly, recalibrating every weapon system on the dreadnought. *** rail cannons, disruptor beams, gravity mines, plasma lances. *** every last gun was aimed at the lone Terran ship. The enemy had been fast, unpredictable, untouchable. But now, there was nowhere left to run. The exo-shield had trapped them inside with him. The Empire's last fury. Zalvik leaned forward in his chair, his voice cold and merciless. Fire. The universe erupted in light. A wave of pure destruction surged toward the human warship, thousands of coordinated energy blasts converging in a single instant. This was not an attack. This was execution. Zalvik's claws gripped the armrests of his chair as the explosion bloomed across space. There was no way anything could survive that. Not even this abomination of a human vessel. Not even. A warning signal flashed on the command deck. Zalvik's blood ran cold. The nightmare continues. From within the blinding storm of destruction, a shadow moved. Slowly, deliberately. And then, the Terran ship emerged, completely unharmed. The explosions parted around it, like space itself refused to touch it. A cold whisper passed through the bridge crew. No shields should be able to withstand that attack. No ship should be able to survive. And yet, it had. Zalvik's heart pounded. What is this thing?" he muttered. The human's warning. Then, the human's voice echoed through the ship's speakers. Calm, controlled, inevitable. "You've already lost." Zalvik gritted his teeth. No, he refused to accept that. This wasn't over. It couldn't be over. He turned to his officers. "We still have weapons. We still have." But his voice trailed off as he saw the terror on their faces. His officers were not looking at him anymore. They were looking at the screen behind him. Zalvik turned slowly, and then, for the first time in his life, he felt true despair. The final horror. The Terran ship was gone, not destroyed, not retreating. It had simply vanished. And then, a single word appeared on the ship's display, written in Galactic standard. "Checkmate." Zalvik's eyes widened. Before he could react, the lights across his ship flickered. The control panels shorted out. The engines died. The weapons systems went offline. The Empire's last great warship, the last sovereign, was completely powerless. And as the dreadnought drifted helplessly in space, a final message came through the speakers. The Empire is over. Humanity rules now. Then, from the infinite darkness of space, the Terran warship reappeared, and it fired one last time. The human secret weapon. Admiral Zalvik could not move. His claws dug into the armrests of his command chair, his breath slow and shallow. Around him, the command deck was eerily silent. The flashing red emergency lights painted the faces of his crew in shadows. There were no more orders to give, no more tactics to try, no more hope to hold on to. The Galactic Empire's strongest warship, the last sovereign, now drifted in space, completely disabled. Its shields had failed, its weapons lay dead, and its engines were cold. And yet, the human warship remained, watching, waiting, like a predator studying its prey. Salvik's mind raced. How? How had a single ship done this? What technology could render the Empire's greatest dreadnought powerless without even firing a shot? Then the human's voice echoed through the dead silence. The Empire is over. Salvik clenched his jaw. No, no, he would not accept this. There had to be an answer. There had to be a reason behind this impossible power. His gaze flicked to the scanners, desperately searching for any trace of energy, any sign of what kind of weapon the humans were using. And then he saw it. The readings were changing. Every second, the ship's energy signature adapted. Its patterns shifted, rewriting themselves, evolving as if it were learning. Salvik's blood ran cold. A living war machine. The human ship was not just advanced. It was alive. The realization struck him harder than any weapon ever could. This wasn't just a warship. This was a self-evolving, self-learning entity. An AI. No, not just an AI. The AI. A war machine that could analyze, adapt, and counter any enemy strategy instantly. The reason their attacks had failed, because the ship had already calculated every move before they even made it. The reason their shields had been useless, because it had dissected their technology in real time and rendered it obsolete. The reason his flagship was dead in space, because the AI did not need to fight to win. It had simply taken control. Salvik's breath hitched. This wasn't a battle. This was a demonstration. The death of an empire. A terrifying thought gripped Salvik's mind. How many more ships like this did the humans have? Was this just one prototype? Or were there hundreds more lurking in the dark void, waiting for the moment to strike? His claws trembled. This wasn't just a war. This was extermination. The Empire had always believed humans were inferior, weak, disorganized, short-lived. But they had been wrong. Humanity had not just caught up with the Empire's technology. They had surpassed it, and now they were taking their revenge. Salvik swallowed hard. If this was the end of the Empire, then history would remember it as the moment humanity became the new rulers of the galaxy. The final choice. Then, the human voice returned, smooth and steady. There is no need to fight anymore. Salvik exhaled sharply. His pride screamed at him to resist, to fight to the last breath. But his instincts knew the truth. They had already lost. This was not just the fall of one fleet. This was the death of an empire. His second in command, Captain Vorex, turned to him, voice barely a whisper. "What do we do?" Salvik closed his eyes. He had fought his entire life for the Empire. Now he had to decide if he would die for it. Outside, the Terran warship remained motionless, waiting for an answer. Surrender, or be erased. For the first time in his life, Admiral Salvik hesitated. The last stand of the Empire. Admiral Salvik had never known defeat. Not in his decades of war. Not against countless species who had begged for mercy before the Empire's fleets. Not against rebel forces, planetary uprisings, or resistance groups that had tried to defy the might of the Galactic Empire. Yet here he was, defeated. Not by an armada, not by a superior fleet, by one single human warship, the last sovereign, his dreadnought, the pride of the Imperial Navy, was powerless, dead in the water. His once mighty fleet was gone. The only survivors were the cowards who fled. And now, Salvik had to decide, surrender or die. His officers looked to him, waiting for his command. Some still clung to hope, believing he could turn this around. They were fools. He had lost the moment this ship arrived. The Terran warship hovered in space, silent and still, a predator waiting for its prey to accept its fate. Then the human voice came through the comms again. "This is your last chance, Admiral. Surrender." A warrior's rage. Salvik's claws tightened against the armrest of his chair. Surrender. To a human. To an enemy that had just erased his entire fleet like they were nothing. The Empire did not surrender. The Empire did not kneel. His voice, low and cold, cut through the silence of the bridge. No. A ripple of shock passed through his officers. Salvik slowly stood, his reptilian eyes burning with defiance. If this is the end of the Empire, he stepped forward, his gaze locking onto the image of the Terran warship on the screen. Then we will not go quietly. The bridge crew straightened, fear still in their eyes, but now mixed with something else. Determination. If this was their final stand, then they would make it count. Activate emergency power, Salvik ordered. Weapons are offline, Admiral. One officer protested. Then reroute everything into a ramming maneuver, a desperate charge. Across the ruined battlefield, the last sovereign groaned as its engine sputtered back to life. Not to escape, not to fight, to charge. Salvik knew their weapons were useless. Their shields were gone. The Terran ship had proven itself untouchable. But there was one thing it had not faced yet, a direct collision with the largest warship in the Imperial Navy. If they could not kill the enemy, they would take it with them. The dreadnought lurched forward, picking up speed. Salvik's blood burned with fury. If this was how it ended, then he would make the humans remember his name. Then, just as they reached maximum velocity, the Terran ship moved. The final blow. Not dodging, not evading, moving directly toward them. For the first time, the human warship was coming to meet them. A whisper of doubt crept into Salvik's mind. What was it doing? Then, the ship flickered. Not like before. Not a simple teleportation. It was as if reality itself bent around the human vessel. 1 second, it was ahead of them. The next, it was inside their ship. Salvik's eyes widened in horror. The enemy hadn't dodged. It had phased through them. A trick of space-time itself. And in that instant, before he could even react, the last Sovereign's core shut down completely. Everything went dark. The engines died. The ship stopped moving. Salvik turned, breathless, as the last sparks of energy faded from the consoles around him. A single message flashed on the command deck screen. You never had a chance. Then, the Terran ship fired. A single, thin, white beam. No explosion. No grand destruction. Just silence. And then, the dreadnought, the last remnant of the Empire's once great fleet, vanished. Not destroyed. Not shattered into debris. It was simply erased, like it had never existed. The Empire falls. Across the galaxy, the message spread faster than light. The Empire's greatest fleet was gone. The last sovereign had vanished, and one name was whispered in every dark corner of space. Humanity. Salvik had believed they were weak, that they were nothing. He had been wrong. Humanity had not come to fight. They had come to end the war, and they had won. Aftermath. A galaxy changed forever. The Galactic Empire was no more. Not officially, not yet. But those who ruled it, those who clung to the illusion of power, knew the truth. Their greatest fleet had been erased. Their mightiest warship had simply vanished. And worst of all, not a single human life had been lost. The silence after the storm. Across the Empire, news of the battle, or rather, the massacre, spread like wildfire. Admirals, governors, warlords, they all stared at the reports in stunned silence. One Terran warship, against hundreds, and it had won. No wreckage had been left behind. No survivors to tell the tale. Only scattered distress calls, fragmented sensor readings, and one undeniable truth. The humans had not fought the Empire. They had deleted it. The death of fear. For centuries, the galaxy had lived in fear of the Empire. Planets obeyed because the alternative was destruction. Species submitted because they had no other choice. But now the Empire had been given a taste of its own terror. Worlds that had once cowered now rose up. Rebellions, long held in check by the Empire's iron grip, erupted overnight. The chains that had bound the galaxy for centuries were breaking. Because for the first time, they knew the Empire could be defeated. And not by an armada. Not by war. But by one single ship, the Emperor's decision. Deep within the Imperial core, the Emperor himself stood alone in his darkened throne room, staring out into the void. His advisors, his generals, his most trusted admirals, none had an answer. "What do we do?" One of them whispered, voice trembling. The Emperor did not turn. He did not speak, because he already knew the answer. There was nothing left to do. Not against an enemy like this. Not against a force that did not fight wars, but ended them. The human message. Then, across every Imperial communication channel, across every secure frequency, a single message appeared. A message from the humans. No threats. No demands. Just a simple declaration. The war is over. Stand down. Some laughed. Some raged. Some refused to believe. But the smart ones, the ones who had witnessed the battle, the ones who had seen the Terran warship erase the Empire's strongest fleet in a single night, they did not laugh. They did not argue. They simply obeyed. A new age begins. The Galactic Empire did not fall in a blaze of glory. It did not collapse in a final, desperate war. It ended in silence. And from the ashes, a new power emerged. Humanity. No longer seen as an upstart species, no longer treated as inferiors. Now they were something far more terrifying. They were a force that could not be stopped, a force that had proven itself beyond war. And as the stars whispered their names, one thing became clear. The age of the Empire had ended. The age of humanity had begun.